you. Well, I was a little bit nervous about this event and didn't know what to do. And then I thought, well, I really want to have some fun. And I thought that might be a theme for today. And so I'm going to play for you Elliott Carter's Two Diversions for piano. He wrote them in 1999 because Carnegie Hall was commissioning a series of pieces for the new millennium. And these are two 4-minute pieces, and they each have a kind of playful element. And I'll play them separately. The first has basically 3 voices. One is a very slow ostinato. You'll hear it by itself at the beginning. And the other consists, not all the time, but of 2 contrasting voices, a very lyrical one, and then one that's usually in the bass going bump, 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 sort of like making fun of a bassoon. And you'll hear this among other things, but maybe it'll give the piece a unity between the different sections. This slow ostinato gets twice as fast or 4 times as fast, and then it relaxes again into the slow ostinato. The second diversion has a different game. In this, basically it starts out with a slightly uneven melody. And then throughout, you have one line that's in a tempo, which is even for a while. And another line also in a tempo, which is even, but the first line keeps getting faster, and the second line keeps getting slower. Of course, this isn't all the time, but that's sort of what's going on there.
point about the music? Just then I'll.
It's a, yeah. Oh, well, I'm just there's only one chair.
I know, we're gonna get another one.
Oh, we're getting another chair.
Unless you wanna have both.
No, I'm okay. Yeah, this can stay.
Which chair do you want?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Or even lie down. Great.
Sure.
Can you tell us, Ursula, how these two diversions represent Carter's style? Are they within his normal style, or are they just kind of bagatelles that he...
Well, they're bagatelles, but he wrote a lot of lighter pieces. Okay, for me, the essence of Eliot's music is that it's about different voices talking very often at the same time. Basically, his music reminds me of a dinner party, or the dinners we have, where there might be 2 or 3 conversations going on. In these 2 pieces, the first piece has 2 conversations, but 3 people, because you can hear the ya-da-da-da-da-da and the ba-ba. And the second one just has different motifs showing their identity. But this is very much Elliott Carter's music. That's why I love playing this piece, because it's kind of distilled, you know, in terms of his interests.
I just kind of wondered if you had, hasn't been scripted at all. This is
Right.
just pop up.
But we met when we were both in high school.
Oh, yeah, you want to go back there?
No, I don't want to go back there. I just want to say that's...
Oh, yes. I just wanted to ask you if you ever thought of doing something like we're doing here, but maybe we can do it here, where next year, if you come and you can talk about various composers, ones that you think are either close to your heart or not close to your heart, but important in the future of music, whether you wouldn't want to talk a little bit about why you like those composers or what their music is about, to leave that with us. What do you think of that idea?
Well, you mean for some future or right now?
Yeah, future.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think... I mean, for me, the main thing is the composers I've played generally are my generation, or a little older, like Carter. There are so many wonderful young composers writing right now. And
I think it's so important,
yeah.
your comments about composers of your generation. I think that would help all of these people here connect with people of their generation.
Yes.
You know, these stories make such a huge difference.
Well, you know, this is a piano festival, but all of you go to a school where there are lots and lots of composers, and many of them are fun people to be with. And you might want to hang out with them, and they might want to write something for you. You might want to listen to their music, their fellow students, and now is the time to get to know them. Because, as I say, people say I've worked with a lot of composers who are quite famous, but when I met them, some of them were students.
Right, and the important point about it, we could do this as a mini-series,
Yeah.
and we could discuss it. I think that it would really inspire everybody a lot to hear stories from your life. I mean, obviously it has to be framed in some way, but it would be so nice to hear about, you know, Ursula and her friends, because that's what basically you're saying, go out and talk to your friends and create something, and that is, you know, this idea of becoming yourself is the basis of this festival.
Yeah.
So that's a deal for next year.
Okay, all right. Okay. And as I say, there's a reason you go to schools that you might also want to talk to some mathematicians at your school or art historians. That's the whole idea of being at a school, at a university or college. And that's really the basis of why we have colleges, is so you can get to know something other than what you do, and then in addition to doing what you do.
So one of the questions I was going to
Yeah.
ask before we got off
Yeah.
of this tangent, just which had popped into my mind earlier, is, you have seen, I don't know, a gazillion students in your career as a teacher, probably more than you could count. And I just wondered if your perspective on teaching has changed over the years, or whether it has, or even if it hasn't. Do you find that certain themes come up that you feel more passionate about verbalizing or showing to your students?
Well, I can't go beyond what you have written in the welcome letter, which is that it's an equal aspect of knowing your roots, know the history, know the literature, play the literature, but explore things you don't know, and be yourself, But it's really, sometimes, as a teacher, I remember, well, as a person, I remember how eager I was to play the Schumann Fantasy, Beethoven, the Chopin ballades. As a teacher, there might be a temptation to say, well, I've heard this ballade 100 times, but we shouldn't do that because we want for you to be exploring it,
Are there pieces that you don't want to teach? I mean, I guess I could be more frank and say, I could start by saying, there have been some pieces that, like the last few years at Eastman, where some student would say, "I really want to play such and such," and I would say, "Why don't you just save that for somebody else?" I mean, there are pieces that, you don't love every piece.
Well, I would say that you try to love every piece.
But I mean, there's some pieces that I've tried my whole life to love.
Now that's a very personal question.
I'm going to be 80 soon, and I just said to myself, well, if I haven't learned to love it by now, it's not on my bucket list. Just give me a break.
Yeah.
But are there pieces like that for you?
Not really. I mean, I do feel my obligation not only is to love a piece, but to understand how a student will love it. And how, I mean, that's, otherwise, why be a teacher, I mean, that's my role.
Right. Yeah. Well, what would you like to talk about next?
Well, I mean, we've exhausted everything.
We don't really need to stick with the teacher part.
Yeah.
It can be just in life.
Well, go to live concerts.
Yeah, go to live concerts.
That's, live music for me is, well, we're all old enough to have experienced the pandemic and how miserable we were, I think everyone was, to some extent, unhappy. And I remember the first concert I went to after the pandemic, and you could only sit every second row, and the seats, you could go with a companion, but then it was 5 seats over to the next one. It still felt so absolutely wonderful. So I think, in a way, if I was to say, the most important thing is to connect with people, and music is a way of doing it.
And live concerts are so different than sitting in front of your computer and listening to whatever's on YouTube. I mean, that's...
Right. I mean, obviously, it's wonderful if someone mentions, well, an opera you've never heard, that you can actually go to your computer and listen to the opera, and that's very good to do, instead of waiting till it comes to your town 7 years from now, But it is, music making, we know from archaeology that there were flutes long before there was written language, and we know from cave paintings and that music is really one of the things that keeps human beings together. And I remember going to the Austin Orchestra Philharmonic, and they had various groups organized about singles groups. I mean, you didn't have to be single to join it, but there was sort of for people 25 to 35, a cocktail hour before the concert. Yes, and that seemed to be a wonderful way. And yes, I think we were getting audiences, you know.
When was this?
This was maybe 15 years ago in Austin, Texas. But it was a way that the orchestra had figured out. And as I say, you didn't have to be single, but if you worked in an office or, you know, behind a computer for 8 hours, it was wonderful not to have to say, I don't have anyone to go to the orchestra with. You just went to this little party and then to the concert.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
So this brings up the idea of, you know, one of the things that I hope all of you will take away from this festival and all the people that are here is to have ideas like this. You know, all of your ideas do not have to be attached to the piano and the piano bench. There are all kinds of creative, not only social things, educational things in your own communities where you can reach out to other people and make music with them or make music for them or explain to little kids about, you know, introducing them to music. I think it's about taking initiative. I mean, if you want to find yourself and eventually be yourself, which is not a static thing, because I sort of am myself, but myself changes every day. You know, I'm just like always changing, because it's a creative energy. I think that you start with doing things with yourself.
Yeah.
And doing things alone is not as profitable as reaching out and finding another human being, or even could be a group of animals.
Especially as a pianist, we tend to be alone and lonely, I think. I mean, we don't play in an orchestra. I mean, normally, you know, and so we have to work a little bit harder to.
Well, also all the hours you sit in the practice.
That's what I'm
by
talking
yourself.
about. Yeah.
So you
So-
have to do something to counteract
Yeah.
those hours.
Now when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, some friends and I formed a new music group. And our programs were not necessarily programs to appeal to the general audience. You know, 20th century works by young composers. This wasn't the 20th century, so we didn't have any 21st century. But what we decided to do is give really good parties afterwards. So we'd convince someone to come to a concert. Oh, please come, we'll leave a ticket for you. And they'd come, and then we'd invite them to the party. And the morning after, they really couldn't remember whether they liked the concert or not. But they had had a great time at the party. So they came again.
All these are really neat angles, see? Ursula's full of good ideas.
I do practice, though.
That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah.
So when did your, these ideas, these creative ideas, you know, when did you start doing these? When you were in your 20s, or was it, did it start in high school? Or?
Well, not in high school, but college. I mean, in college, I did play in the student orchestra. I played cello, not very well, I mean, very badly, but I could count. So I could be counted on to come in the right place. So I got into the orchestra. And the orchestra was very convivial, and we did have good parties.
Where was this? What city?
In Cambridge. It was the Harvard Radcliffe Orchestra. And we did have very good parties, and maybe that's where I got the idea that the party. So as you gradually become faculty members, which many of you will become, you can sort of encourage student groups to get together and enjoy themselves after the
So
concert.
when you were younger,
Yeah.
you know, like high school and younger, did you feel more lonely? Because as you got
Yes.
older, you integrated with various creative ideas.
Absolutely, yeah. I did feel,
So the hard part is to get over this loneliness hump.
yeah.
But it can be at any age, you know,
Right.
when you feel that.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we have to spend, really, we do have to spend 4 or 5 hours, at least generally, by ourselves in a practice room. And we have to, I mean, we were talking at dinner the other day. For me, the pleasure of practicing is when I practice every day. And I notice each day I'm just this much better than I was.
That's an interesting subject because there's nothing more I like in the whole world, even as much as I love chocolate cake. My favorite thing is playing my piano by myself, for myself, practicing, playing through. I don't know, it's just like a special magical world that I go into. And it's odd that the older I get, the less lonely I am. I mean, it's my happy place. So there's a conflict there. On the one hand, I want to reach out and I enjoy playing for other people, but at the same time, I have such a good time, and I'm not always making the most practical decisions. Well, I definitely don't. If you don't have a goal, or you don't have a concert, or you don't have a deadline, then, I'm happy to wander around and learn repertory and do this and do that. So I think it's very hard at any age to find balance between, how much time you spend by yourself and then, well, this is enough and now it's time to kind of make a connection. So there's like a highway that you're on between, so it's almost like a seesaw with a balance point in the middle. So you just sort of do that. And I sort of had an unwritten rule, unless there was some like big pressure put on me when I was in college, for instance. I really didn't practice more than 3 hours a day or 3.5 because I wasn't as clear. I mean, first of all, I'm a really early morning person, so that's my best time. And then there are so many other interesting things. So, I think everybody's different, but I'm not a person that recommends practicing 6 and 7 hours every day. I actually have never, ever been able to practice 7 days a week for 52 weeks.
No, I once in my life, for about 3 weeks, practiced 8 hours a day. It was because there was this deadline, and
It's very hard to do that.
And I was preparing for a concert in England, and I had a place to practice. And I had a very good friend who, at 9 at night, would take me out to a party afterwards. So the next day, I felt I could go back to that. But that was a very short period in my life,
You can't do that all.
Yeah, no, but I think Mr. Lowenthal once played for, I think, Rubinstein. And Rubinstein asked him how much he practices, and he said, I'm sorry, probably not more than 3 hours a day. And Rubinstein, never do more. So, it's different for each person. You've got to do some practicing.
Well, the other thing is you can also, if you're in school, it's really nice to call other people into your practice room and play for them and exchange ideas, and even composers.
Yeah.
That's sort of, because you'll get a completely different take if a composer listens to you than whoever's in the next practice room.
The other thing is, even I remember when I was in high school.
Where did you go to high school?
A private school in New York.
How did we meet in high school?
Because we met, because I had met Edward Auer in Aspen, and I visited him, and he took me to a lesson you were having with Orbit Serco.
In Aspen?
No, in Los Angeles. Yes.
Somehow I don't remember that.
Well, because you were playing and I was in the audience.
In his house?
In his house, in Serco's house.
Which house was that?
I don't know which house. Orbit Serco's house.
I know they had 2 houses.
Well, that I don't.
Okay, what year was this about?
Okay, it probably was when I was 17, which means it would be 60.
So that was in the first house.
Okay, 60 or 60, or the spring of 61.
Yeah, it must have been the first house. I don't have any memory of seeing anybody ever at my lessons except Gabriel Chodos.
Yeah. Well, Gabriel had also come to Aspen the summer before. Yeah. They had come to Aspen the summer I was 15. And so I was 16 or 17 when. But I do remember. I mean,
Okay.
Okay.
I believe you.
anyway,
Well, that was interesting.
yeah.
So what were you going to say? Now that I diverted your attention.
No, she was great then.
What was I playing?
That I don't remember.
See?
But I do remember that it was fabulous.
Really?
Yeah.
No memory.
Well, that's what I
I
remember.
remember Fleischer always going, he was always practicing in Avi's house.
Uh-huh.
I remember Glenn Gould practicing.
Wow.
And he was sitting on the, he wouldn't sit on a bench or whatever, nothing was right, so he sat on the floor. I remember standing there thinking, God, I mean, I didn't know who he was. I was I must have been 11. But there he was, sitting on the floor, and he was playing the Goldberg variation.
My goodness.
Sitting on the floor because that was the right height. I mean, that
Wow.
was just, I don't even know what word to use. It was amazing. It's amazing. So,
Yeah.
so do you have any, do you have any special messages or, things that you'd like to
Well, I've
say
one.
to people who are much younger than we are?
Okay.
You know?
Well, I'll give one advice about practicing, which is feel free to be lazy. If anything hurts, just don't play. That I know many people get very worried when something hurts and they feel, what should I do differently? Well, what you should do differently is stop for a few minutes.
Or a few days.
Or a few days. I used to be a New York Times addict, so I'd read half an article. And that, anything. Ideally, take a walk. That's the best. But just feel free to relax. That'll be my one.
I'm going to probably say this a million times before next year, but I think the theme of next year's festival, now that we're talking so much about be yourself, roots and branches, I think that we need to talk about linking your instruments. Your body is one instrument, and the piano is another instrument. And there are all sorts of different ways to talk about linking the two instruments that we have. And the idea behind this, at least my vision of it for next year, is so that you can all play without getting tense or stiff, with fluency, without pain. And if you can do that, that really frees up your imagination, and you can work out much more how to deal with the piano and how the piano works and how the energy transfers between your body and the piano. So,
and don't get angry at yourself if something doesn't work.
Absolutely, that doesn't help. I mean, always treat yourself with love. But it's not so easy to do, because there are times when you're frustrated.
You are frustrated, and of course you're frustrated. I mean, that's why you're practicing, because you can't play this passage. But, but don't criticize yourself too much.
Yeah, that's a really important point. It's really, really important not to judge yourself. I mean, that doesn't go anywhere, and definitely don't compare yourself with anybody in your studio or next door neighbor. You're you, and you're unique. And even though you may hate the way you play whatever that day, you're still unique. And you have to go with that appreciation of yourself.
Yeah, and, just because yesterday wasn't great, today might be a lot of fun.
Well, and also, one of the things I always was so impressed with Picasso, who would get up in the morning and paint a picture, and then he would go on with the rest of his day.
Who are you talking about?
Picasso.
Oh,
Pablo
wow.
Picasso, I just thought that was the most amazing thing. I would take any one of those pictures.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So he had such a gift. And Chihuly is another one has that kind of gift. But I think if you approach the piano that way, that it's a gift to be able to have talent, to have an instrument and really embrace it. And if you have a great day, great. And if you don't, you can guarantee that tomorrow is coming and you'll have a great day tomorrow or the day after. Right? Any questions? Yeah.
Sort of on a tangent, and I hate to break this wonderful bubble that we are in. But going back to the Carter and going back to the music that you've been, exploring for such a long time, whatever you want to call it, avant-garde, postmodern. Over all these years, can you tell us how this exploration of this kind of music has contributed or shaped or changed the way that you thought about more traditional repertoire?
Well, actually, at lunch, Ilya Itin brought up the idea that even now, when you come to a piece for the 150th time, you see something that you hadn't seen before. And of course, with a brand new piece, everything is new. You look at it, it makes no sense at all. A few days later, you begin to see, oh, this does make some sense. It's sort of like washing a very grimy window, a little bit comes out. But this also happens with pieces you've heard a lot. I mean, for me, the difficulty was that my mother was a piano teacher and my parents were musicians. So it was hard for me to hear some of the great classics for the first time, because I'd heard them for the first time when I was an infant. So what I learned from new music was to listen to them for the first time. And that was really exciting.
Yeah.
My question is, when you firstly approached to his music, to Carter music, and why, when you firstly approached to his music for the first time, why? When you in the 20s?
When did you first approach new music for the first time?
And then why did you choose this particular composer for today?
Okay, going back really to my experiences growing up. Because my mother was a piano teacher, there was very much a sense of, you listen to a Beethoven sonata, and all that was talked about was the performance, and not how interesting this modulation is, or how did he get back to this theme. So I couldn't do that with classical music. So basically, well, at college there wasn't applied music, so if you wanted to go to a concert, you went to a concert basically of composers, though of course in the orchestra we played Beethoven symphonies. And then when I moved to New York, I started going to the concerts of the Group for Contemporary Music. And I found I had to listen to their music. I couldn't possibly listen to the performance because I didn't know what the music was. And so that's really was how it happened. Yeah.
Earlier, when you were describing the divergence and Carter, you had a really charming way of humanizing the characterization of how it appears to you. I was wondering, I have my own approach to when I'm, for the layperson, it's very complex music, how to approach it and humanizing it. But what was your most difficult experience of trying to relate to a certain piece of music?
Well, there are pieces I couldn't relate to, though maybe I could have, I don't know, I like trying to get to relate to a piece, so that I like the effort in a way. The most difficult experience I had was when Conlon Nancarrow wrote a piece for me, and it was 5 against 7, a canon. And I didn't know what to do. And finally, after about a week, I said, you don't have to do anything, but stay in a room And you can't do anything else that has a name for it. Just stay in the room with the music. And then finally I gave up and I divided the measure into 35 bits, which was my second grade math. You know, but there was no fancier way of doing it. But it was there. In other words, I had had second grade math, so I knew what I had to do. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
When you first see the a page, a score for the first time, what is the first thing that you think about? About I don't know, notes, rhythm, what is?
Actually, I find it good to start with no assumptions whatsoever, unless the composer has said something, you know. But I basically start on the upper left corner and try to play it very slowly but accurately. In other words, really not to smooth over things. And I expect actually now, and even when I was quite a bit younger, nothing to sort of reveal itself for a few days. But after let's say if I work on it an hour a day for 5 days, something will show up, you know, but I don't know what it will be, but I want to let it show up. I don't want to bring me to it and say, I think this is it, you know. So I feel approaching it without prior assumptions is very helpful.
It reveals itself.
Yeah.
In your multiple experiences dealing with living composers, contemporary composers, would you be able to define a scale of, how should I say it, when some composers would really, let's say, insist on, okay, no, you do what I wrote or whatever, or other composers saying, no, you do what you want. Is there a range? Or?
There is a range, and it isn't, you know, a stepwise range, and it might be also that composers, well, okay, I'll go back to, we have heard, well, awful performances of Beethoven sonatas, but we might have heard 5 different performances of the same sonata that are different from each other, but we all think, wow, this is wonderful. And actually, one of my teachers had said as a motto, there are many wrong ways to play a piece and only one right way. And it's a motto I do not agree with.
Right.
When Elliott Carter wrote Night Fantasies, it was commissioned by 4 pianists, and immediately another 2 or 3 great pianists played it. And we all sounded very different from each other. And Carter seemed to be very pleased with all the performances. So that's not to say do whatever you like, but it does mean that there's a real range of what you can do, even while being accurate, you know?
And that's true of any living
Yeah.
or dead.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
yeah.
I think
Okay.
we should take a little break and then we have
Lessons.
class.
Oh, class. Oh, right. I have
Right.
lessons.
You have to teach.
I have to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
A little hug.
Mm.